Okay, sorry, whoever's out there watching, I was a little bit late cutting this on, but we're starting on our first lab, which is on a manually operated directional control valve. This is an example of it, and it has it's three positions. It has a neutral position, and then it has a away from the body and then toward the body. So this can make a cylinder extend and retract, or it can make an air motor turn actually in two directions. So we're going to be taking a look at the sticker that's on here. What does that diagram mean? We're going to be taking a good look at what does all of the things about that sticker mean. And what it boils down to is each block on here represents the flow path direction of the valve. How does the air flow through it and return through it in each of the three positions? So there's three envelopes or three squares on there. You have a center position, which is when you release it, and then you have a left and right position for extend and retract. And it's going to tell us the flow paths of the air out to your cylinder or air motor and then back through the valve to the exhaust manifold, to the exhaust mufflers. Okay, so that's the internal construction. And when we say it has a spool inside, that's a metal, it's a solid metal spool that gets shifted. And when it gets shifted, what happens is it changes what ports are connected to each other. It changes the flow path of the air. Does the cylinder that it's hooked up to, is it going to go out or is it going to come home? And how does the air return from the other end of the cylinder back out the exhaust ports? All that stuff is determined by the position of that spool. And it's run manually here, to where in labs coming up, it's going to be run electrically with coils. Electric coils are going to run it, are going to control it so that you have to manually run it. Look very closely here. There are three different types of spools that could actually be in that same valve body. That same valve body can have three totally different types of spools that are inside of it. And here's one of them is called an open center spool. One's called closed center spool, and the other one is called a tandem center spool. The one that we have is called closed center. So let's take a look at what does it mean. So I'm flipping on your lab paper here. There's a picture of the valve that's on the trainer. That is a diagram, the little sticker that's on the valve. And this is how it's actually hooked up. This is the way you're going to hook it up. So look closely up here. Does everybody have that on their paper where you can see it? Now, so the dash line is the trainer unit itself. It's the enclosure that holds the air components. Down in here would be where the air source comes in, and each unit out there has a little compressor down in there that we don't use. We started having some problems a few years ago with those little compressors, and so Mr. Meredith decided to just tie in all of those to the big compressor up here. And so the class he was in, they actually ran piping. So we're just going to cut the main compressor on that's up here with a switch outside the door, and it's going to provide the main air supply going into the machine, okay, into the trainer. Now, on your display up there, you're going to have a filter. This symbol here, the picture, if you flip your paper this way, if you flip it to the side, those symbols are drawn vertically. Now, what I would do, just so you can make more sense out of it, take your paper and flip it like this. Okay? And when you do that, here's what you have. That second symbol right there represents, now, when we get into chapter 2, we're going to be looking at symbols, okay? And I've got a symbol handout to give you, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with too many symbols at one time. But what this symbol here represents is it represents a filter unit that filters the air. The little dashed line in there The dashed line in there would represent like a filter element, like an oil filter, but it's an air filter. Everybody's got air filters on the vehicle, right? So your air filter would be the dash line portion of it. And then down here at the bottom of it, if you flip it like this, it is a filter that actually has a drain too. It has a valve that can be opened up and it can drain liquids that end up in the air. Say if there's condensation in the air coming from the compressor up here, condensation in the air line, when it gets down to here, then it can actually be drained out of that clear filter bowl. It's a bowl, it's a clear bowl that has a filter element in there to catch solids. The dash portion catches your solids, your particles, solids that are in the airline. Maybe somebody's done some pipe welding and there's some weld slag in a pipeline. So weld slag that gets carried through the lines, this dash line would actually capture that weld slag before it could get in the machine and damage our cylinder seals and stuff. And then the bottom portion of it, if you hold it like this, is a gravity feed bowl that lets your oils and liquids settle at the bottom and be drained out so that it doesn't get in your machinery. So that's your filter there and drain. And then here would be an air regulator. So that symbol there, what it represents is when you hold it, let's see if maybe I can rotate this. Let's see if it'll let me rotate. I'm not sure if Word will let me do that. I don't see a way to rotate that image there because it's a Word document. But what I'll do is I'm going to show you over here the meaning behind that regulator symbol. How do you understand what we're looking at? It's an air regulator. So I'm going to draw that same symbol horizontal instead of vertical. I'm going to flip the paper like this, and I'm going to draw the regulator. I'll say I'll draw the filter. And here you have the dash line for the filter element itself, and then there goes the drain. That's your air supply coming in. And then we go over here to the regulator. So the regulator is a box. And it's actually a thing that has a knob on it that has an adjustment to adjust the air pressure that you're going to set. You're going to have to set this regulator yourself out there on the machine. It doesn't look like that physically. It's just got a knob, a black knob on it, and it has a body, a round body with a knob on top. But the schematic symbol for a regulator is this. And I'm going to explain each part of it so you can understand the symbol itself. Now, let's break down the symbol really quick here. Okay, watch. You leave the filter and you go into the regulator, the air regulator, this adjustable. Now, this line goes straight through, which means that there's always airflow going through the regulator. The regulator doesn't shut off. It's not like a valve that cuts off and on. There's always airflow going through it, and it adjusts the pressure that comes out of it. You adjust it with a knob. There's a spring up here, and the spring has an arrow going through it like this. You see the arrow going through it like that? The arrow and the spring means this, that the knob that you adjust for pressure has a spring under it inside. And that spring pushes on a diaphragm inside the regulator. And the spring tension determines the output pressure of the air valve. So the tighter you go with it, it's going to be a higher pressure that comes out of it. So, this signifies the adjustable part of the valve that you adjust by hand. This signifies that there's always air flowing through it. The next part would be the dash line that comes from the valve, a dash line that runs around here like this, and it goes to the output of the valve. Now, so this dash line means this. Now, let's go right on out to here. And then we actually have an air gauge We have a pressure gauge here with a needle on it. That's an easy one to understand. That's kind of a giveaway. That symbol means it's a pressure gauge. It's very, that's a giveaway there, you know. Then off of the schematic, it comes down to a manifold where it has some quick connects, 4 quick connects that you can tap off of to go to cylinders and to go to valves and things. So I come over to here, and there's some more dash lines here. Like this. Now, out here is our access point to where we can get air to go to you know, for your labs. These are check valves. These are check valves, one-way check valves that are open right now. What happens is when you take an air hose and you pop it in there, that ball opens up and air can come out. But when you pop the air line out, the ball falls with a spring and it shuts off that port there. Those are check balls that are in quick connect female fittings out there on the machine. So this is the point to where you actually tie in to get air on the machine to go do your lab. Okay. Now, so let's back it up to here. This dash line on the regulator means this. It means that whatever tension that you set that pressure setting for, say maybe 60 pounds or 80 pounds of air, whatever you set it for, the tension on that spring, it's going to control the pressure that comes out of it. Now look, within the regulator, there's a sensing line that monitors the output of the valve. And it actually has a sensing line that goes right back into the regulator that does this. Here's what it does. The diaphragm in there that's underneath that spring, here's what happens. Is if you have, say, if you have 100 PSI of air coming from the compressor up top, but yet you want to set this thing up for 80 PSI. Here's what the regulator does internally. It's what it does is when you set it for 80, the air pressure comes out of here, and then there's a sensing line within the regulator that goes from the output line right back in under the diaphragm. And what it will do is it will actually modulate the diaphragm internal, and it will actually choke it off until it gets to 80 pounds. And it will constantly sit there and modulate and adjust itself to keep it on 80, because it always monitors that feedback line that's within the valve itself. This is within the valve body. The valve knows what the outlet pressure is. It knows what it is. Maybe the pressure here goes up all of a sudden to 115 pounds, and it can. This compressor up here can run up around 140 PSI. So let's say that when as the compressor cycles off and cycles on as it does, and it's on the up end, it's going up, and maybe it gets up to, it jumps up 115 or 130 or 140. This output is going to start to go up, isn't it? And what'll happen is that the higher it goes, that feedback line pushes against the diaphragm, and it starts to choke off the outlet, and it adjusts itself internally constantly. So an air regulator is a self-modulating valve that it always adjusts itself to your set point. It always looks at the outlet by way of that dash line there, and it always knows what's leaving it. It says, wait a minute, too much is leaving it. It's going to start internally like a little person in there shutting it off, and it's always looking at the outlet. And so what happens when the air compressor goes through a down cycle? To where you're using a lot of air. A lot of things out here start using air, and then the air in here all of a sudden drops down to, say, 90 pounds. Well, 90 pounds, for instance, yeah. And it starts to get down. Well, what'll happen is it'll make those little minute adjustments. If it went from 115 out here and it had the diaphragm at a certain position, and then the incoming air changes to 90, it's going to make that little small adjustment. It's going to make that little adjustment so fast that you don't even know it. You don't even know it. It's doing it so fast. It is constantly doing it because of that little dashed line from the outlet back in. So does that make sense? So that's internally. When we get to the chapter on pressure regulators, you will see a physical picture of this, the real physical picture cutaway, and you'll actually see the orifice on the inside that does that. You'll see that. So then next would be, right here, you see that check valve symbol right there with a ball. When you take the air hose out here and you plug into that manifold, that's a manifold with four connectors on the machine. When you plug a quick connect hose in there, what'll happen is both of these check balls will open up internally within the fittings on the ends of the hoses. The hoses have the fittings, have the check balls in them. So when you plug them in, those little balls open. So when you put the hose on the manifold, the check ball that's on the hose and the check ball that's in the manifold, they both open, and then air will flow out of here to the valve. Make sense? And if you pop the quick connect loose, both of the balls will reclose. You'll hear a little spurt and it'll close. Okay. So let's take a look at the valve itself. Your air line is going to go into the center port, which is port number 1, and then port 2 and port 4 are going to go to some air gauges to begin with, so you can see what happens as far as air pressure. Once we go through the experiment, you can change them. You can actually tie in a cylinder and see it run a cylinder or air mode. Okay. So you go straight out of 2 and 4. That's what I call your working ports. Go to your air lines, and then 3 and 5 are going to be open to the atmosphere for exhaust. Now, in real life, there would be some small little mufflers that'll be plumbed in there, and it'll actually shoot through the mufflers. But here it's just going to be shooting right straight out of the ports, to the air. Just directly right out of there. And when it's like this, a little noisier. It's kind of noisy. When the thing runs, you put mufflers on there, and instead of it going pow like that, pow, it silences like a gun, like a silencer on a gun. Y'all know about silencers on guns. So if you don't want a gun to be so loud, they put a silencer on it. Well, that's the way they do on air valves. They put mufflers on their silencers, and it doesn't affect the operation of the cylinder, nothing matter, but it's better on the ears, So anyway, so this shows the diagram for the valve, and let's talk about what does this mean. So let's go a little bigger. And let's even add I'll go as far as to draw a cylinder up there too, as well as the air gauges. So I'm going to draw a cylinder up here. Now, so I've got a cylinder drawn in there. I've tapped it off of the lines for the gauges. And let's talk about what happens here. Now, this valve is 3-position, and the first thing you want to talk about will be the center position, because this is called a closed center valve. On the closed center valve, it means this is when you let go of the stick, the springs make the spool go to the center. And here's what happens. The air pressure coming into port 1, it actually gets blocked. It's actually shut, it's blocked. And then the working ports that goes out to the cylinder and the gauges, they're actually blocked too. So in the center position, all 5 ports are completely blocked, and the cylinder can't even float. The cylinder is actually physically locked because it can't float under load or anything. The lines are actually shut. So it's actually under an airlock too. You know, it can't move. It physically can't move. It can't even drift in the center position. Now, if you move the valve to one position, you end up with this scenario, or envelope, what they call. So here's how you read these symbols. You take this line here, and you've got the picture, this air line feeding that center up there. Instead of you dealing with this now, you're dealing with this, not that. So let's draw it up here now. I've got the air line now shooting into here. Okay, you follow? So your air line shoots into here, and now watch me real close here. Watch. So now I'm going to take your working ports right here. So I'm going to shoot it right over to here, and go into there. And this other one goes over to here, and now to the bottom of the cylinder. So when you move that stick in one direction, here's what happens. The air line shoots in the center port. So these other 2 ports would be your exhaust. Your exhaust would be this one and that one. Everybody follow? Those 2 outside ones. That's your exhaust, like either it's 3 and 5. This is 3 and 5 in this scenario when you move the stick one particular way. Everybody got it? So let's get rid of this. So I don't have too much clutter up in here. Now, so when the stick is in one position, the air actually moves out of the port number 2. This will be port 2 here. This is port 2, and then port 4. Everybody see what happened? I transferred the numbers up here to this envelope up here. And this is like 3 and 5, 3 and 5. Everybody got the idea. You just move the numbers. You move everything up to here. That's your scenario. So with the stick, let's say if the stick goes away from the valve, if you pull it maybe away from you, then the air is going to shoot here to the rod end of the cylinder. Which way does the cylinder go? If you shoot air into here and it begins to fill the cavity, which way does the piston go? Okay. How many people say that it's going to actually retract and go home? Okay. How many people say it's going to go up? You think about it now. If the air, at least if the air shoots into here, you're pressurized in here, and look, this end of the cylinder, the cap end, is actually shooting out here to the atmosphere out port 5 to the air. It's an exhaust. So this is the exhaust end when you're putting pressure in here. If you put pressure in this end against that piston, it's going to retract. You see that? The cylinder is going to go home. It's just going to go down. Everybody follow? Does everybody 100% agree? There's O-rings. You've got O-rings in here that seal around that piston, and that air pressure is going to push, and it's going to have to go home. So then what happens if I let go of the stick? If I let go of the handle, what happens? What happens to the cylinder? Well, if it's already home, if you move the stick away from you and it goes home, and then you let go of the stick, what happens? I didn't understand you. If I move the stick on the valve and the cylinder goes home, but then I let go of the stick and it goes to the center position, what happens? What happens to the cylinder then?
Nothing.
It just stays where it is, right? It stays because, listen, because then you're back to this. When you let go of the stick, both of those springs on each end, that spring and that spring, it makes that spool go to the center position. And look, port 2 and port 4, these two ports are locked up, right? They're locked up, so they just stay wherever they are. And then your incoming port 1, it's also locked up, blocked. So the cylinder kind of just stays where you left it. Even if something on the machine maybe goes against it, it's not going to move because the center position is called closed center. It's a closed center versus an open center or a tandem center. That's in comparison. I'm going to move this, and it's going to look kind of wacky for a second. If you go back to the other types of spools, oh God, that was not good. Let's go down. You see these other spools? That's a closed center. You got one called a tandem center and one called an open center. Now, open center is a whole different animal. It's a whole different type of a spool. It makes the machine act way different whenever you let go when you let go of the stick. So just to show you, for instance, on the open center, the air pressure coming into one, when you let go of the stick, here's what happens. The air pressure actually shoots out of both of your working ports equally, and it actually will shoot to both ends of the cylinder, and it puts the same pressure on both ends of the cylinder. So the cylinder would basically be sort of in a middle position, or basically in like a middle position, which is a rare type of a valve to have an open center, but some cases they have to have it for the machine requirements. And then if you have a tandem center, look at here. Tandem center, whenever you go to the center position on the valve, you let go of the stick and it floats to the center. Your air pressure coming in is actually blocked. And then both of your working ports that go to your cylinder, both of them actually exhaust at the same time. So the cylinder is in complete limbo. In other words, it's loosey-goosey, okay? The load out there can be pushed and moved. Now that could be a case to where some machines, they have to be that way for emergency. Maybe you got it where somebody hits the E-stop and that valve goes to the center position. Maybe they want it so that mechanical thing would be actually in limbo, and it could be if somebody got, it could prevent a jam up or make a machine relax. It could make a machine relax instead of it staying where it is. Maybe if it's a machine prone to jamming up, they may use a tandem center type spool valve, so that when they hit the E-stop, that load could actually not be under any tension. You know what I mean? It would not be under any pressure. I'm gonna tell you something I did one time that the first time I ever run into this, it was a real shocker on me. We had a machine that had a particular type of a valve. It had like a closed center valve, and then the machines that we had were used to having closed center valves. We got a new machine come in from Ohio that had like a tandem center valve. I believe it might have been this kind right here. So this new machine come in. I didn't know that that's the type of valve that was on there. After so many months of running that thing, that valve went bad. So I looked at the valve from a distance and I said, well, we got one of them on the shelf in there. So I went and got the valve that we had. It looked just like it, but the diagram was different. I didn't read the diagram on fact. I didn't read this diagram. I was used to this, and I didn't even know that there would have been another kind of valve coming into the plant, So I went and got the other valve, and I bolted it on there, and the machine acted squirrely. And I said, man, it's worse now, man. What have I done? You know what I mean? You change something out, and it got way worse. The machine would just drift then. I said, man, what's going on now? So I got the two valves, and I looked, and I said, it's not even the same kind of valve. And we didn't have another valve on the shelf like that. We had, I think we had to wait overnight to get one in, to get it to fix the thing, because we just didn't have one on the shelf. So that's kind of my thing is physically, the same valve body would bolt on, and you wouldn't know. In other words, you could put the wrong kind of valve on there. It's the same valve body, but internally the spool is different, and it's a different part number. You know what I mean? And the way you would know when you go to replace a valve, here's what you want to look at. you want to look at the sticker on there that shows you the center position and make sure that what you're putting on there has the same type of center position. Because that, again, that was a very surprising thing that happened there. Okay, so back to here. So we were sitting here before I messed up my lines here. So everybody agreed there that takes it home. Now let's go to the other scenario. Let's take the stick, pull it back toward the valve. So we're going to erase these lines. All right, yeah, that's still safe. We're going to erase the lines here. And so where do we go now? We're going to go down here, right? We're going to choose this scenario. So you go to here. And we take this one right down to there. Because these two are going to be 2 and 4 now. And then your airline, then it shoots into here. And then your exhaust would be your this is 1. That's your air inlet. And then 3 and 5 are your exhaust. So there goes exhaust port 3, exhaust port 5. Everybody follow? This is a key thing. If you know how to read this thing, you're going to be ahead of the game wherever you work at. And we X that out. So we got air pressure coming into port 1, and we got the stick pulled toward us, and the air comes down to here. So let's get that out of there like that. Let's go back here. Oh gosh. Yeah. Cylinder here. Mess myself up. So we're shooting air in the bottom end, right? So we're filling up the cap end of the cylinder underneath the piston. And so what happens to the cylinder? Cylinder goes up, right? It goes up. And now the air that's actually in here, what happens to the air? It has to go somewhere, right? It comes out of the exhaust. It comes right out of here, and it comes right back to here, and it shoots out of what? Port 3. Exactly. You have air shooting right out of there, and it'll just go. As the cylinder moves, it's going to go, shoot, and then it'll quit. You'll hear it go if it's in slow motion. Make sense? So here, your exhaust, they vent to the atmosphere because it's air. If this was hydraulic, then there would be a return line going from here back to a reservoir, and it would take your fluid from the rod end, the actual oil that would be in here, and that oil would have to go back and dump right back into your reservoir. That would be your return line. So when we do hydraulics, which would be the second half of the class, the second 7 weeks, then you're going to be dealing with hydraulic hoses, and you don't shoot to the atmosphere for sure. It has to go back to the reservoir. So, so that's the difference between the return atmosphere versus going back to a tank. Hydraulic is called a closed system because it's fluid, and it has to be closed. And where this is an open system, it pulls in air, cleans it, uses it, and then it shoots it right back out into the room. You know, so it's an open system. Does everybody understand how to read that valve? Okay, so we can take right now. Let's go to the trainer, let you set it up, and let you do your lab. I'll come by and see you work it. And there's questions that you're going to answer in the lab. So we got time to do it. If you watch, it's telling you to connect it the way the diagram showed, and then it wants you to write down the pressures of your system gauge your port 2 gauge and your port 4 gauge. So there's going to be 3 air gauges there. You're going to write down what they are. With the valve in home position, let go the stick. Then you move the lever toward the valve body and hold it. Notice what your 3 pressures are. Write those down. And then move the lever back away from the body. And you write those 3 pressures down, and you explain what you saw. Explain it in terms of, with that stick moving that spool inside, it changes the flow path through the ports. That the spool does it. You're manipulating the spool inside the valve. Everybody follow? So you do all of that. And then the other questions, I'll help you with those. There's information in the beginning of the lab to help answer those questions, but we're going to discuss all of that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do it. We got right at 30 minutes, so we got time to knock it out. And I'll move this thing out there. Yeah, I'm trying hard to make sure you get your hands on this stuff as quick as possible. And I know your time is very valuable. Okay, so those of you that are watching, recording, we're going to move out to the shop now. Let you see the guys do the lab. You need the lab sheet. The lab sheet has everything on. Yeah, just the lab handout I gave you. That's all you need. You need the handouts, yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir, man. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have to go real slow with it.
Let's get it done. Mm-hmm. You're recording.
Oh yes, recording now. Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, if y'all take a look over here on the wall. I'm going to show you where to cut the compressor on. The compressor's upstairs. We got a remote switch over here on the wall. Everybody look real good here. Everybody see this here? Turn your face away from it. There's nothing. We hooked that up about 3 years ago. And I finished this down. That's what you get. Yeah. That was a good thing. That was a good thing. Yeah. What I was just showing it was this switch on the wall. That's the remote switch for our compressor. It's actually upstairs, up there in the mezzanine where I'm pointing there. So that's where we cut the air on. Some of the other things may be bad, and if they are, I got a little reason to explode. into y'all. Y'all have safety glasses. I have one by it. Yeah, make sure you bring it next time. Yeah. I think there's actually some over here. Do you want these safety glasses? Make sure if you look on here, put your glove on, make sure you get back here. Don't have one right up here. Right, you gotta have a mask too. Anybody need safety glasses? Got the blue or they got the clear. Make sure I get these back. Hey, make sure these glasses, I'm gonna put them right over here on this table. Right there. And if you need a mask, I got the mask. I don't want nobody to be surprised with me. Yeah. We gotta get some other rings. He's got some other rings that are dry rotted. Let me get my lock right. We'll go to the test score. got to make sure that the air. So just find out. There's another thing. Everybody else here on the wall. You're gonna have that airline that ties in the manifold on the wall. And just make sure that your main air valve is on. Say yes, yes. You have. That's fine. Just say it. You're ready. Yeah. Let's right there he is. So the series going to step 3, you're going to stick your system pressure, stick your high pressure. Is there a training on it? Just work.
No, I work with him.
That's fine. That's fine. Just. What you want to think about is that when you have 60, 60, 0, the pressure here doesn't affect, that's just like the top. And then when you move the 60, 0, 60, in all the nations, in all the nations, when you make somebody it makes them move. These flying kind of work for back up and long thanks for what this is the rest of it. Some of these questions I'm going to have to talk to you about. But the same for what I'm going to keep papers, make sure that you no, the school is actually inside here. The school is inside there. So out here, it's inside this thing. This is school. This little poor picture. That's the school. School is everything was not. It's like a shaft. And it moves back and forth. And it does change what we're doing. That's the school. The school is actually inside this. Look, when you move that stick, you're actually moving that school on the side. And it just slides inside the hole. Slide inside. So you move kind of like it was. But it's just inside. And it changes what, you know, what the air goes on. After one question is began, do a good job.
You should just see my computer. This board here, so I wrote my paper. I wrote it as my years too.
If I see them all right, I don't know. Maybe you've got a different line, maybe a different line.
This one has the diagram.
Yeah. That's possible.
So maybe that's normal, I maybe that different line. So it might be some other thing. It might be they couldn't get that kind of loud, but they could do some other thing, and they just change it up. That's what you gotta keep looking out for the loud. Right. But there, if you want to see it goes on cylinders up out and back, you would run, well, yeah, because you would be, you know, the hose. Exactly.
What is this?
It's a pilot operated valve that you shoot air in here to make it go one way and shoot air to go another way. So it's like that type of a valve goes in flammable areas or like where you put signals and you can't have an electric out. You got to have external control valve. At first, you can't run it directly. It's going to be running the locus and the low valve is ran by air from something outside. This both of these takes place in this position. You got to have outside air source and you run this. You run this. It's called pilot operated air power, which means, let's say if I got to have that, it's like a flat air. You have You gotta have something like that. Actually, your source, it might be on, well, it's outside the tank there. Then it's gonna be some kind of.
I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. I wasn't sure.
We're gonna, I'm gonna help you with that. Let me just see. Okay, now put the back around on the inside of the drawing. Roll. Yeah, just roll. Do not say roll. I mean, you know, you just smack it.
I thought you said.
I mean, I'm just, well, what we have.
I thought you were telling Shelby that you wanted to put it on. Oh, okay.
I was just going to sign off and I said, all right. I'll be everybody waiting to be on.
What am I doing? Yeah, I got Because I know it's supposed to be the same.
So the whole of this, and then the third, we can talk about that. This guy has paperwork files. Everybody else. Matter of fact, what I do, once I see, I just highlight it. All right. Okay. Thank y'all for coming, and we'll pick up the work from here Thursday.
All right.
Appreciate you coming. Thank you. I don't really have much time to wait. Right now, I have to about I tried that the other day, it get broken. By the time I get out there, I got to hurry in the wood, smaller hole. It's all nice to do food one way. It's not happening. If you decide to buy it, Sorry, I did not move I keep forgetting to move the camera around. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll try to remember Thursday to move it around better. I forgot that I need to be moving the camera. So whoever's watching, sorry about that. Have a good evening. And hope to see you here in person Thursday if you can.